Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Talos of Tech Live in a bit of an earlier stream than usual, but I got time. I'm waiting for the sun to come up, which helps lights the EV videos, and Tim Cook got me up and early, super active and super awake as soon as I was just sitting on the couch enjoying my morning. I was about to watch the next Starlink launch, and then they dropped the YouTube video, and the Apple website was way behind. The new YouTube video that Apple published on like how not to use a computer or how to use a computer or whatever. That revealed everything before even the newsroom post was updated. So I was just watching that video and I was like, "Oh crap, that's a different camera. That's not the same." And then they start showing the iPad floating off that keyboard cover and everything. TVTube, by the way, thank you for Twitch priming me for 18 months. Holy cow, that's a long time. Appreciate that. But yeah, as soon as I saw the iPad floating off the ground with the trackpad and everything, I was like, okay, there's something new. We gotta get up. So I had to get dressed real quick, hop off the couch, and turn on all the lights and everything. It's just too early. Why do they have to drop these so early in the morning? I'm just glad that I get up early and I'm a morning person now. If they did these releases at like 10 or 11 at night, I would have totally missed them because I'm in bed by 8 these days anyway. Yeah, Drew this morning was in big panic. No floating keyboard until May. Correct. So the keyboard with trackpad is not coming out until May. I don't know if that's just because they're working on it more, or maybe it's because of factory holdups with coronavirus. We can say it on this. It's Twitch. Because of COVID-19, maybe it's delayed for that reason. But the new iPads are still coming March 25th, so they don't appear to be impacted that much by new manufacturing methods, or it's possible that these have been in development for a long time because we were seeing some rumors yesterday of new iPads registered with the EU database, and a lot of them apparently were meant for 2019, not 2020, which made a lot of people curious because they were like, I wonder if this launch got delayed or this launch got pushed back, and they really wanted to release these last year because we were definitely seeing the leaks of the dual camera rumors for a long, long time. So much stuff finally makes sense now. I'm glad because we've been following this whole iPad Pro refresh for a long time, and we've been getting leaks here and there. But I'm glad that it's not the exact same camera setup as the iPhone 11 Pro. It's a little bit different with the LiDAR sensor. I guess AR stuff probably makes more sense on the iPad than it does the iPhone, but I need to see more use cases for it. So a lot of people are probably thinking the reason Apple's doing this via website refresh is because they couldn't have a March event, whereas I disagree. I think they've proven with the last couple of launches that they're willing to do big major updates over website refresh now because they don't see the point in doing a keynote when all the same YouTubers are going to talk about it anyway. So I think this was going to be a website refresh regardless. I don't think an event was planned for this launch, to be honest. Cyberplay, hey Matt, thank you for the tier 1 sub, appreciate it. Garrick donated 250 bits and said, "Are you in lockdown?" I'm not sure what lockdown means, but ever since I heard about COVID-19, I started working from home. I happen to also be working from home before then, but this is the one channel and the one livelihood that for the most part is untouched by the COVID-19 pandemic because I just instantly I keep working from home. Nothing changes. So I just keep doing that. 100 bits from Vinny says, Drew, love the channels. Do you think now that the MacBook Air has quad-core processors, the two Thunderbolt 3 ports will be discontinued and they will update the 13-inch to 14-inch? Possibly. I think there's something in store for the next MacBook Pro for sure. Now that they have shown that they're willing to give the MacBook Air the scissor key mechanism with the Magic Keyboard, which before I thought maybe they'll just leave the butterfly keys on the MacBook Air because that's one's supposed to be thinner. But now that the MacBook Air has a Magic Keyboard, now it's just stupid that the 13-inch MacBook Pro has butterfly keys. Now no one should be buying a 13-inch MacBook Pro right now. Terrible time to buy one. Absolutely terrible because there has to be some type of 14-inch refresh in the works, basically just giving the 16-inch MacBook Pro treatment to the smaller end version. Now that we know they're bringing over Magic Keyboard to MacBook Air, it's like, absolutely that's coming. So a refresh and update for the 13-inch MacBook Pro is absolutely got to come soon. I don't know how soon. Maybe before June or maybe at Worldwide Developers Conference, but it has to be in the works now. There's no way they're keeping around that butterfly keyboard. They're ditching everything now. Matt says air power is out. I don't believe you. Thank you for the bits though. iOS Pharmaceutical, thank you for the Twitch Prime. He says, dang it, now I really don't know what to do anymore, as I was determined to get the 2018 iPad Pro at a cheaper price, but that new one does look really nice. 128 gigabytes should be my dream storage size, and the new camera and especially AR stuff looks really nice. Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent update too. The main thing being there was no price improvement. So Nick, I saw your complaints about I hate the iPad Pro. The iPad Pro sucks. I think it's just because we've been saying this for years now. The 2018 iPad Pro was significantly ahead of its time. And I still stand by my previous reports that if you have a 2018 iPad Pro, the 2020 iPad Pro would not be worth an upgrade. That would instantly be something to skip out on. It's like an S year because the 2018 iPad Pro is just so far ahead. It doesn't make the 2020 iPad Pros suck. It just means it's not something everybody needs to update to instantly. It's not a night and day difference year over year, and iPads can't do that. There's not enough upgrades. There's not enough technology in the world for them to be worthy for upgrade every 12 months. But the fact that they doubled the storage size and kept the price the same at the same point, no increase in price, doubled the storage, doubled the cameras, added the LiDAR sensor, which, again, there may not be a whole lot of use cases for it right now, but still, if it comes at no additional cost, they're not selling the old iPad Pros anymore, just like S year for the iPhone. They're swapping out the old ones, and in that sense, it's an upgrade. It's also a faster CPU with the A12Z chip. So we're getting that. Changes with iPadOS to accommodate for this keyboard cover is providing options for those who care about it, but if you don't care about it and you just want a keyboard, you still have that option. Okay, they didn't discontinue the Smart Folio keyboard cover. That's still an option. It's the same price as before, and you can still get it with the new iPad Pros. And Apple could have very easily, very, very easily, in fact, they could have made the new trackpad and Magic keyboard cover only work with the new iPad Pros. That could have been instantly just a software limitation. They say, nope, can't use it on the old iPad. You have to get the new one. But they didn't do that. They said, guess what? We're making the new trackpad with Magic Keyboard, backlit, by the way, and adds that USB-C port. No, it's not at full speed because it has to go through the smart connector. So I understand that the smart connector can't be as fast as normal USB-C. But the idea is when it's plugged in, it will sustain its battery life. It won't go down. And then the USB-C port available on the iPad is capable of full data transfer and full power and everything. DJ Thornton, thank you for the tier 2 sub. Getting to 19 months. Holy crap, that's coming up on 2 years. Thank you, DJ. 100 bits from Matt. I ordered an 11-inch 256 gig Space Gray, and I have a 2018 I will give to my grandmother. That's nice, you. Very nice. If Flyer donated, how many? 41 bits, thank you. I have the iPad 5th gen. Should I get the iPad Pro 2018 or 2020? If it's rocking features you care about, I mean, I bet the prices for the 2018 iPad Pro are going to go a lot lower now, which is a good thing. So it means that if you just care about ProMotion, Face ID, same size bezel and gesture control, and you don't need the new cameras, you don't need the A12Z chip, you don't need to go above and beyond, you don't care about the new microphones or anything like that, then yeah, just go for the 2018 iPad Pro, which I'm sure will be on sale now. Apple will probably add it to certified refurbished soon because they do have a trade-in program for the 2018 iPad Pro, but it sucks. They only give you like $240 back, so don't do that. Just sell it or something like that. New iPad Pros are still dangerously thin with average battery. Nick, that's a problem you have with your iPad. Not everybody's sitting on theirs or bending theirs all the time. Average battery, it's the same battery as the last one. All I wanted was the iPhone 11 Pro camera and the better battery with thicker case to avoid bending. They didn't do anything I wanted. Well, they weren't... Are you taking tons of photos and videos on your iPad, Nick? Or are you sitting there with it on your desk all the time? I think if you're taking pictures and videos, then you have the camera for that. You don't need two of the exact same camera, just like most people don't have two Canon D7s, except one's just a lot larger. Are you going to keep the new iPad Pro? I don't know. I got the 11-inch version. I ordered it as soon as it was available, and I'm going to use it for a while and see if the hardware is worth it to me. I don't know necessarily if I want to hold on to it, but the fact that I can use the new keyboard and trackpad case with my 2018 iPad Pro makes me consider just using the 11-inch iPad Pro for a little while for the review purposes, and then I might return it, or I might sell my 2018 iPad Pro, depending on the experience of it, if the A12Z chip makes that big a difference, or if I notice some difference with Face ID, or test out the ultra wide. Like, it's handy, but the phone is still going to be the best camera. Nick does play Ultimate with his iPad Pro. The specs. My problem is they didn't write the camera specs on the back. I know. Why couldn't they write space zoom on the back? Let's see. 2018 iPad Pro has been on the certified refurbished store for a while now. Oh yeah. Well, now the prices will either go down or be priced decently by other third parties like Best Buy or Target or something. They're going to have the old one at decent price points. But no, I do not agree. I don't think the new iPad Pros suck. I think they just prioritize things you didn't find very interesting, but this in no way is a bad upgrade. You can't really complain about upgrades if they're the same price as the last one. It's like, okay, look, the iPad Pro you can buy today for the same price as the one yesterday is now better in tons of metrics. Double the storage, better camera performance, better CPU performance, better GPU performance, and it's rocking a new camera sensor no one else has, LiDAR. Tesla doesn't even have LiDAR. I need to see some use cases or some apps that take advantage of that, but it's interesting. I'm still confused as to why the iPad needs a compromised ultra-wide. Like, was that a complaint? I guess it helps for AR stuff, because doesn't the ultra-wide lens help the main lens on the iPhone with a lot of motion tracking, because it's using that ultra-wide to collect data around the primary lens you look at? So I get that it's compromised compared to the iPhone, but at the same time you have that argument of like, well, it's probably not there for the sake of photography and videography, because that's not what most people use iPads for. But the LiDAR thing is just Apple just trying to push people to make better or use more augmented reality apps. They need to demonstrate some in order to get to that point. But I would be much more annoyed with LiDAR and the ultra-wide lens if it brought the price up. The fact that the price has stayed the same means that I don't care. Add whatever you want to the iPad. Add whatever gimmicky feature you want if the price stays the same. And the iPad Pro was not overpriced, in my opinion. The fact that you could get ProMotion, USB-C, super thin design, super powerful CPU, and now 128 gigs by default for $800, that's not overpriced, because you cannot find another device that will offer all those things. So I don't consider that an expensive iPad. So it's not like the Pixel 4 added, like the Pixel 4 stayed the same price, but it added all these things no one cared about, like air gestures, and that's when I complain, when I'm like, you're already too expensive. You're not, you are overpriced because you're offering things other people can offer for cheaper. So the Google Pixel needed to go significantly cheaper, and they didn't. They stayed the same, and we're adding things that were not helping or no one was asking for. Let's see. How do you think Apple's going to do the iPhone 12 Pro with all the cameras? How do you think the cameras are going to be with the LiDAR? I imagine it'll look somewhat similar. They might have to redesign the camera module a little bit in order to get it to look the way it does on the iPad, given they want to keep the telephoto lens, I assume. Overachiever just donated, says, just recently got into credit cards and finance channels. I'm not sure if you could do any more Tailosive, but I've been so down for Tailosive Finance. Like I said, guys, I'm maxed out with how many videos I can post regularly to the channels I have currently. I will let you know if I get to a point where I'm ready to take on more channels, but I'm already inactive on half of the channels I have already started, so I'm not going to start any more, though. Will it bend, though? I imagine, like any tablet that's thin and made of metal, you can bend it if you try hard enough, but take care of these things. And I imagine that this cover that has a hinge equipped with it and a keyboard and a trackpad is probably going to help with that a little bit. But the bending thing was really, really popular at the beginning, but you noticed it didn't really stay on past that. There were people that bent theirs, but it got really popular at the end of 2018, and then throughout the rest of 2019, barely anyone was bringing it up. Like I said earlier, will I keep the new iPad Pro? I don't know. I'm going to try it and then decide for myself if I like the 11-inch form factor or if I think the camera sensors are worth it enough to keep, or the A12Z chip makes a big enough difference. For what I use my iPad Pro for, it's very likely I won't keep it. depending on my experience with it. I might turn out to really like the 11-inch form factor, and in that case, I might just consider selling my 2018 iPad Pro, help offset the price. And then in May, I will definitely get the keyboard case, mostly because I want an extra USB-C port. I've wanted that on the iPad for so long. It's crazy that the iPhone is still rocking Lightning, but now the iPad Pro can rock 2 USB-C ports, and there's still iPads that don't even have USB-C yet. Yes, I will absolutely try the new keyboard. Not because I'm super into the trackpad, though I will say that the user interface I've seen so far with the new trackpad was not what I was expecting, and I like what they're doing with it more than I thought I would, because what I didn't want was just a trackpad with a mouse on the user interface that you click and drag around, and that's not what they're doing. They're basically doing a hybrid type experience, and I'm glad they brought that up in the newsroom post. They literally said, rather than copying what macOS does with a mouse, we're doing something totally different, which is that the cursor, it's not really a mouse, it's more just a little dot that moves around the user interface. So the trackpad behaves a lot more like a touch interface than it does a mouse interface. So it's not the same as just moving macOS over to the iPad, which is what I was worried they were going to do. And I'm kind of okay with the keyboard case being so expensive, because it means that developers are not going to fall back on the cursor to just make all of their apps the same way they are on desktop. So you still will pretty much have to design things for a touch interface primarily. But this is different. This is going somewhere in the middle. It's not the same thing as a Surface device having a trackpad. It's not the same thing as a Pixel book having a trackpad, or a, what's that thing called? Pixel tablet? I can't even remember. Pixel C? Why can't I remember what it was called? Pixel Slate! That's what it was. I ranted about that thing so much I forgot what it was called. This Magic Keyboard looks incredibly thin. Judging from the pictures, it looks pretty much the same as the old Smart Keyboard. It might be the same as the old Smart Keyboard, but it's definitely not the same as the previous Folio keys, because it's backlit, and the keys have, I think, a higher travel rate than the Smart Folio. Let's see. I'm surprised the new cursor feature is an iOS 13 update and not an iOS 14 feature. Yeah, that's a good point, Scott. I was not expecting that either. I thought something as major as cursor support would not be in like a iOS 13.4 update. That sounded like a whole iOS 14 thing, but it makes you wonder, do they have something even bigger planned for iPadOS 14? Like, if they introduce macOS ARM, why not bring that to the iPad now? They've got all the hardware necessary. And I don't know how I feel about that. This is definitely one of the smallest trackpads Apple's ever made in a long, long time, because most of their trackpads are huge, and this one seems pretty small. But the fact is, it's being used for more like handy cursor support, not necessarily a mouse, like it is on macOS, where that's like the primary input. I don't know. This feels weird. Yeah, I know. I brought up in my video that the Mac Mini was updated, but they didn't do much with it. I was hoping they would update the CPU and GPU options for the Mac Mini, but they just doubled the storage, and that was it. So that it's still the same CPUs as before, which I thought was kind of, they could have done more. Instantly makes my MacBook Air redundant. Yeah, I saw some people in the Discord saying that the MacBook Air is kind of pointless now, whereas I disagree, because you have to acknowledge the fact that to get the cheapest possible iPad Pro with a keyboard and mouse, the cheapest one possible is $1,100 before tax and shipping and all that. So it's $800 for the 11-inch iPad Pro plus $300 keyboard and trackpad case. That's $1,100. MacBook Air starts at $1,000, and that's a larger display. That's a 13-inch notebook with a keyboard and trackpad, a bigger trackpad, and you've got the scissor key mechanism on there. Whereas the cheapest iPad Pro with keyboard and trackpad is 11-inch. That's a pretty small laptop. For a tablet, sure, 11 inches is decent, but for a laptop, that's pretty tiny. That's pretty small to be working on, especially with a trackpad and stuff. And you get a more powerful best CPU, I thought. I didn't see that. It still said Intel 8th generation, which is the same one I have, right? I'm streaming from a Mac Mini right now that I bought way back in 2018. Yeah, 3.2 gigahertz 6-core Intel Core i7, 8th generation. Yeah, the CPU didn't change for me. So yeah, the MacBook Air and the iPad Pros are overlapping definitely now, that in order to get, A 13-inch iPad Pro, $1,000, with a keyboard and trackpad, $350. That's a $1,350 iPad setup. Yes, you can get MacBooks for that price. So, again, it comes down to a software debate, but I'm just happy to see that Apple is not merging Mac OS and iPad OS experiences quite yet. They have to do ARM architecture, redesign to Mac OS if they decide to do that. Either way, though, that trackpad on the iPad would be really, really small with a Mac OS experience. So, it would be weird. What would you want Apple to add in Mac OS for 10.16? Oh, man, I don't know if I want them to add very much. I think I just want them to focus on stability and less bugs because that's what Catalina was. I think 10.16 should not be a huge deal. I think that what Apple needs to work on is the transition to ARM, which we know is coming. It's been an open secret for years. So they need to work on a heavily modified version of Mac OS that only runs like first party and apps off the Mac App Store. And I know that not everyone would like that at the front of the door, but it would help with performance probably. And if they unveil a Mac OS with an ARM CPU, a Z chip or whatever, Windows snapping like Windows 10, yeah, that would be nice. I like that, but it's not a huge deal. I hope they make one MacBook Pro 14-inch without the mini LED crap. Yeah. I noticed no one complaining that the iPads don't have 5G. You notice that. It has gigabit LTE, which I guess is not the same. It does have Wi-Fi 6. I noticed that. The last gen iPads did not have Wi-Fi 6, but I don't think anyone notices. I'm definitely adding the keyboard to my 11-inch Pro to see if I like it, but I'm kind of hitting myself for getting a MacBook Air in the fall instead of waiting now. There's never, honestly, with MacBooks, there's never a good time because they refresh these things randomly. It's not like iPads or iPhones where we can predict when they're going to drop very easily. MacBooks are like, there's new CPU, let's update it. Oh, there's new this, let's update it. So it's, thank goodness there's no 5G. Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. I was like, hey, no one's complaining about that. You noticed? So if a new iPhone came out without 5G, I don't think many people would care, to be honest. Oh, there we go. iOS Farm's bringing it up now. The mechanic donated some bits. Thank you. When do you think the iOS 13.4 is coming out? Probably any time before the 25th, which is not far from now. It's the 18th, right? So next week. We're getting the new iPad Pro next week. Probably at some point. Maybe Friday or Tuesday or something. Probably at some point before that. I returned my AirPods today because they don't have 5G. Do you think we'll get an iPhone SE this week, or will Apple wait a few more weeks? I don't know. It's very unpredictable right now, and at this point, anything could happen. They could drop it in the next hour, for all we know. But if they are comfortable doing the site refreshes like they are before, which they just did one now, pretty big one. They did iPad Pro updates, which haven't been touched since October of 2018. New MacBook Air and Mac Mini updates all in one day, then I'd say it's pretty likely that they're going to do an iPhone SE unveiling or launch or whatever. It may be delayed or something, like we've been hearing some reporters say, like it's been pushed back, so it may be like unveiled in April or unveiled next week, but it will say shipping in May, so you won't be able to get one right away. But I don't know if they would want that big a pre-order period for an iPhone that small. The iPhone SE is not a big upgrade, so I would understand why they wouldn't want to release it until you could order it and get it within a week. There's definitely new iMacs coming at some point, because Koenigs said a new Mac Mini and a new iMac was coming, and he was right about the Mac Mini, so it's coming at some point. I'm still waiting on those stupid over-ear headphones. Oh yeah, the over-ear headphones. Those might still be coming out. If so, it's more than likely going to be a site refresh. They didn't update the T2 chip in the new MacBook Air. Missed opportunity, I guess. I don't think many people care about that, I guess. LTE adds $150 to the price. I don't even want to know how much 5G would add. I'm guessing instead of adding it won't be like adding LTE. It'll be like add 5G or whatever. But they say cellular, so it doesn't matter. Cellular will just include 5G at some point. But it might include like a $200 add-on instead of $150 now. New iPad Pro isn't worth it. There's no Slow-fee button. Yeah, right. Where's our Slow-fee button? Come on. but I think mostly because of the fact that the keyboard case. I think one feature that's really underrated that not enough people are giving it credit for is the fact that it makes the iPad float off the ground. That's really cool to me. I think that's ergonomic. I think that's helpful for viewability, just visibility. That's the word I was looking for. Just being able to hold it up higher and still have the keyboard down here and everything. Like that it can support itself on its own. That's really cool to me. And that's something that I was not expecting this accessory to have. I just thought it was going to be a folio case with a trackpad. And they went further with that, and I'm way more into it for adding a USB-C port so that the USB-C port on the iPad itself is freed up, and I can use other accessories with that while I'm also using the iPad and technically charging it. I know it's only at 5 watts, but I don't need it to charge the iPad. I just need it to sustain it. And the fact that you can provide power on both ends is great to me. So it's expensive. It's high-end, yes, for a keyboard and mouse accessory, but most keyboard and trackpad accessories don't add this much functionality. They don't change the experience this drastically. So to me, I understand why they priced it the way they did, and I'm confused why people are shocked by that. Like the reason I don't have a smart keyboard case is the functionality is just not there for me. It doesn't add enough to the experience because all it's adding is a keyboard. I already have the user interface already has a keyboard. Whenever you need to type something, the virtual one pops up. That's fine. So I'm not going to spend $200 just to add a keyboard. This case, though, is adding the trackpad, which is providing this cursor support, which is not the same as Mac OS. It's kind of redesigning it in a way. So that's something I don't have with the iPad, for one. I have touch, but not cursor. And also, this allows the iPad to float on top of the ground a little bit, and it suspends it, so it's a bit more adjustable. So that's something I can't do with a traditional folio cover. And it's also adding an extra port. So it's technically doubling the user interface. It's adding another port to plug into so that you can sustain your battery while also using the full speed USB-C on the iPad Pro. So to me, that's awesome. To me, that it's more justified. I could see myself buying that and keeping it more than the smart folio keyboard because that's just adding keys, which I already have. I don't need that. Can the new iPad Pro trackpad be used on the old one? Yes. It's compatible with the one they released today and the one they released in 2018, which, like I said earlier in the stream, they totally could have not done that. It would have been the easiest thing in the world for Apple to say, no, you got to buy the new iPad Pro to get the new trackpad and keyboard. But they were like, yeah, it works with the same one. Same old smart keyboard. The trackpad can be substituted with any mouse, though. Yeah, I know. They've had mouse support on the iPad for a long, long time. It's just been an accessibility feature, and now it's getting more streamlined, like cursor, which it's not just a mouse on the user interface, which is not what I wanted. The fact that it goes away when you don't use it and it shows up when you do is a lot better than what I was expecting it would be. Let's see. Using Sidecar with the new floating iPad case? Yes, exactly. That would be so cool with a MacBook. You could just have it right next to it and lift it up off the ground. I think that's cool. How will the new Magic Keyboard support the old iPad Pros with that new camera setup? Well, the new camera is bigger, so the camera hole in the iPad Pro in the new keyboard and trackpad case is large. So the old camera is smaller. It'll fit inside it, no problem. I don't see how it's difficult. 100 bits from Wandering Knight says, I know it's backtracking a little. Can you briefly address my above comment? Love your stuff. Keep it up. Sorry. Let me scroll up. Okay. I used to be completely on board with your opinion of 5G. Recently, I've done some research, and I think it's a good thing from pushing the technology forward. Is it for bigger cities? Yes, pretty useless for rural areas. But its utilization to buildings in bigger cities, and they funneled it into Wi-Fi routers makes a lot of sense, though on that approach, I generally still agree with you on its usefulness or lack thereof, but I think it's a little more important than you make it out to be. My point is 5G. I've never said 5G is not our future. I've always said that 5G is being advertised about 5 years before it's ready. That's where a lot of my complaints come with it, is that carriers want you to believe that it's coming out now, and Qualcomm is forcing companies to adopt 5G modems now, despite the fact that most of the phones with 5G modems in them are going to not be getting software updates in 2 years, long before there's much 5G support for them to truly utilize. And the fact that it's mostly a marketing game, and so many carriers have capitalized off of trying to trick people into thinking either they have 5G already or they need to get a phone with 5G so that they can have faster speeds when they're technically in areas that don't have 5G at all. Like I said, in the places I live, they have big 5G flags outside the store, and they want to tell everyone 5G is here. And I honestly think that 5G that's the same speed as 4G is complete pointlessness. It's unnecessary. You can beef up the infrastructure of 4G without 5G modems. I mean, just look at what they did in South Korea. You can get 200, 300 megabits per second with 4G technology. My issue is them spending a bunch of money on gigabit 5G for the sake of it's faster, but the connection is interrupted by a tree or a wall. So even in cities with big buildings, it doesn't make sense. So I'm not trying to make the argument that we shouldn't pursue 5G. I'm saying we should pursue coverage first, because there are a ton of places, people bring it up in the YouTube comments or on Twitter all the time, that aren't even getting adequate 4G speeds. So I say don't work on 5G until 4G has been perfected and ironed out. And it's not. So I don't know why we trust all these same companies to perfect and, well, just wait for 5G to get better. Just give it a couple years, then 5G will get really good. It's like they never made 4G good. They never delivered on that promise. They rushed it and they didn't perfect coverage, and now they're just rushing to the next G before 4G was figured out. So I don't have faith that they're going to figure out and iron out 5G. They're gonna provide 20% of what they promise, just like 4G. You don't get those consistent speeds everywhere because coverage was not prioritized. Anyway, don't get me started on 5G. We can keep going on that. I literally somehow sat through 20 minutes of the stream and still thought you're talking about it coming out next week or something, and I actually clicked on Apple's website and saw it. Oh, Dr. Pez, I'm sorry. Dr. Pez didn't know the new iPad Pros had already come out. Well, applause to you for acknowledging it in the chat. You know, you outed yourself. Good job. Apple criticized for removing headphone jack, but Android OEMs hyped with 5G when it's totally lacking. Yeah, I mean, they put gigabit 5G capability in the S20 Ultra, and yet this phone is not going to get updates by the time that gigabit 5G is available in most places, or in even a decent number of places. Like right now, in order to get gigabit 5G, you have to be essentially looking at the tower, and you have to be like within a couple hundred feet of it. And this whole claim of we want it to be future proof or we want it to be ready is BS. That's all garbage, because they stop updating these things after a couple of years. The Galaxy S8 has already stopped getting Android updates. So they don't care about longevity. Don't believe that. They're just trying to sell you something now that's not ready so that they can have a higher profit margin. I think the podcast would be a great platform for Talos of Finance. Wait, isn't it already part of it? And yeah, I agree in our 5G issues. Same here. Thank you, Rudy Live, for the Twitch Prime for a whole year. Congrats. You made it for 12 whole months. Yeah, I want to do more finance stuff, guys, but like I said before, I will do that on Talks. Talks doesn't have enough content for me to consider it consistent at this point, and I don't think I have enough to say on finance for it to deserve its own channel. So yeah, finance, if I do more videos on that or talk more about it, that will go on Talks. It will not get its own thing. Do you think it's better to buy a new iPad Pro or MacBook Pro 13-inch? I've never used macOS. Well, for you, definitely get a new iPad Pro. I would recommend absolutely no one get a 13-inch MacBook Pro right now. I think it's a terrible idea, given we know Apple's moving to the Magic keyboards. They've already shown that with the MacBook Air, so there's no reason for the 13-inch MacBook Pro to keep butterfly keys. So it's only a matter of time before they update that thing, and when they update that thing, they're going to give it new CPUs and hardware updates. And that could be in a week, that could be in just a couple months, but I know it's not a year away. So if you're planning on buying a MacBook, I assume it's for the long haul. So I would say no one should be buying a 13-inch MacBook Pro right now. New iPad Pro, sure. Those just got updated. And iPad Pros usually get updated once every 12 to 18 months. Usually 18 months, in fact. But there are some leaks and rumors about a potential 5G mini LED iPad Pro coming out maybe in fall of this year, which would be bizarre, given they just released new ones in March. So, but I don't think 5G and mini LED is going to be worth the wait personally. So I would say, yeah, iPad Pro is a safe buy right now. MacBook Pro 13-inch, heavily don't recommend anybody buy that. I have an AT&T iPhone 11 Pro, and this 5G E really gets people hyped, especially at the AT&T store. but it's completely the same with maybe 5 megabits more. Yeah, 5GE is a complete trick. It's what I mean by 5G was literally made mostly to trick people. As I've seen with all 5G advertising, it's not telling people what we think 5G is. They just think, "Oh, my 4G is slow. I need to get 5G." It's like your 4G is slow because the coverage sucks, and 5G is suffers from all the coverage issues of 4G times 10 because it's even harder to do a 5G network with good coverage than it is 4G. It should be much easier to have good coverage with 4G, but they're not doing that. So, what I am really asking myself, what would be great is we can now pair a Magic. Can we now pair a Magic Mouse with an iPad Pro? I think you could do that now. Or some people were saying they don't work with the first party hardware, but if they're bringing cursor support, I'm sure you can. So with iOS 13.4, yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to use a Magic Mouse with the iPad. When do you think this design will come to another line of iPad? Yeah, I know. I've been asking for that for years now. I asked for it back in 2019. I was hoping they would just take a lot of the iPad Pro features and bring it to a cheaper iPad. Um, so I guess them updating the iPad Pro helps that idea because it means that the used market of 2018 iPad Pros is going to go down a lot to the point that you might start seeing some iPad Pros that are like some older iPad Pros that are like $500. So if that starts happening, it would be in best interest for Apple to start making like an iPad Air 4 that has Face ID and the same size bezel and gesture control. It just doesn't have ProMotion, and maybe it's a little thicker and the camera's not great. That would help differentiate them across the board. But how is LTE weird on the iPad? Without it, Nick, it would literally die. Yeah. It's not weird. I think it's more weird that the MacBooks don't get LTE, but it's probably for battery performance reasons. So my guess is that if they made a MacBook with an ARM architecture, they would give it something like LTE. iPad Mini with Apple Pencil 2 would be sick. I don't know if I would like that giant pencil being on the side of the iPad at all times. That'd make it pretty hard to hold. They might have to make a Apple Pencil Mini with the same charging connector, but it would just be a little smaller. But I agree. We need more iPads with Apple Pencil 2 support. Let's see. I got 200 megabits plus on 4G LTE in low traffic area, which is the same as mid-band 5G. Yeah, it's not like I don't care about 5G if it's not gigabit. I don't care about 5G at all because gigabit on a phone is unnecessary. But yeah, if your 5G is like, oh, our 5G is not, it's not gigabit, but it's still pretty fast, it's like, just do 4G at that point. Don't make me buy a new phone. Don't make me buy new modems and a different carrier plan just so that I can have a little icon in my phone update. Do you think the A12Z will rival desktop chips? Easily. The A12X already rivals desktop chips. It's like they said, it's already faster than most Windows PCs. And the A12Z, I assume, is faster than the A12X. I think that's a safe assumption. There's probably not a way they made it slower. But the question is how much faster, because I don't think many people were complaining that the A12X was slow. So in that sense, it makes it harder for people to justify the new iPad Pro, but it's not the point. The point of it is not to be something everyone who bought the 2018 iPad Pro can now update to. The point is they want to put in the latest hardware possible so that people in the market for an iPad Pro aren't buying something from 2018, because it's been a long time with them not updating the iPads. Now they finally have. And yeah, the features weren't amazing. They weren't groundbreaking. They weren't like must-have upgrades. But as technology peaks faster and faster, you're not going to see those anymore. That's not going to be something they can do year over year. Yeah, I don't think they did anything about Bendgate, but I haven't heard anyone complain about the iPads bending in the past year. That was something that everyone talked about at the end of 2018, and then no one talked about after that. Is the old iPad Pro used now the best student computer? What's a computer? I don't know. It could be. Depends on the student. But yeah, if you can find a used one for a decent deal and get an Apple Pencil, then yeah, that would make a whole lot of sense. Even the A10X from the iPad Pro 2017 is hilariously fast and can handle pretty much everything easily. Yeah, so I think A12Z will not be miles better than the A12X. It'll be probably a little bit better, but in the sense that how you use your iPad is it's not going to be noticeably different. Nick's complaining. The iPad still bends. If you throw it like a frisbee, yes, it will bend. But apparently, it's not a big enough issue for Apple to be concerned about it. Otherwise, they would have fixed it because it's not stopping people from buying it. If it was stopping people from buying it, they would have done something about it. But who knows? Maybe when we get these things, we'll see what type of aluminum they're made out of, and they might be more rigid or something. I don't know. Give me a volume control on the iPad keyboard. My iPad Pro is my main computer and has been for 20 months. So annoying. Oh yeah, I didn't think about that. I just always control it with the volume rockers anyway. But why A12Z? Why not? They get to name this stuff. The iPad Pro site says durable. An iPad Pro Mini with LTE could be used as a pretty big with more features for probably less. They wouldn't call it that. I think they would just call it the new iPad Mini, but yeah. I think the A12Z is only an A12X with a slightly higher clock speed or something like that. Otherwise, it kind of does make sense to stick with A12. What does the Z stand for? What did the X stand for? I don't know. What did the R in 10R stand for? Nothing. You come up with your own speculations, but Phil Schiller literally said the R stands for nothing. Thin aluminum bends, Apple is doomed. Well, it's not bending enough for people to stop buying them. Otherwise, they would have done something. They've had a long time to do something, and they didn't. So I'm guessing it's not a big enough issue. Extreme. I don't think it ever stood for that. Super Zast. Because it's a super chip. Z because it finishes the alphabet before everybody else does. You think it could have been called A13X? Maybe. Their naming schemes are never consistent, so I don't know why we keep expecting them to keep consistency with their namings. Maybe it wasn't fast enough to warrant an X. But they make this stuff up. They come up with new silicon chips all the time. With the Apple Watch, it was the W1, and then with the AirPods it was W1, and then the Apple Watch got the W2 or W3 later, and then the AirPods got H1, and they just move stuff all over the place. Samsung tablets are dead. Well, they've been dead for a long time. Yeah, that's not new. This is my first iPad before I never had a reason to buy an iPhone with a big display. Yeah, it's kind of getting harder to consider the iPad just an iPhone with a bigger display, given how many exclusive features they're giving it now. I think you were right. The iPad Pro was so far ahead of its time. At its release in 2018, even Apple is still playing catch-up with themselves. Well, they're not really playing catch-up because it's not been rivaled by anything. In the past 2 years of tablets and laptops, there's still nothing the price of the iPad that has iPad-like hardware. You cannot find a laptop or a tablet that has the ProMotion display, the A12X performance, a biometric like Face ID, and at a price point of like $800. And now they just top themselves even higher, with the dual camera on the back with LiDAR, and now an even faster CPU and 128 gigs standard. And now with the keyboard attachment, you can be rocking 2 USB-C ports. It's just they topped themselves, and they were already number one. So it's kind of like the Apple Watch trying to think of new updates and new upgrades. It's like it just got even better than it did before. Nope, iPhone sucks now. No mouse on iPhone. Do you find it odd that we haven't had many concrete iPhone 12 design leaks yet? Seems much later than usual. I mean, we haven't got a leak from OnLeaks, but I think part of it is because there's been less communication with Apple employees in the Chinese mass production plants. So, but we have a pretty good idea. I mean, they've still told us like LiDAR sensor. The Pro models will still have 3 cameras, and the smaller models will have 2 cameras. And they want to move to their more squared off design, and we know the screen sizes of 6.7, 6.1, and 5.4. So it's like all we really need is the render. I imagine the concepts we're getting right now are not that far off. But yeah, we haven't got one from OnLeaks. What are you doing with your old iPad? I might keep it. Depends. I'm gonna buy. I'm an Apple sheep, so I'm gonna buy the new stuff when it comes out, just to give you my opinions on it. I don't know if I'm gonna keep it. If I feel like a noticeable difference is there, or I feel like the hardware that's available with this new iPad is worthy, then I might keep that. But if I do keep the 11-inch, I'll sell my 2018 iPad Pro. But If I don't think the changes they made with the new iPad Pro are worth it, then I'll just return it, and then I'll get the keyboard and trackpad for my 2018 iPad Pro because it will work with that. So that's nice. How you feel about them actually doing the trackpad? It's not what I thought it was going to be for people just coming in. I thought they were going to just let accessibility feature become a primary thing and just let the mouse be on the user interface. But it seems that from what I saw on the website and how Apple addressed it themselves, they were like, look, this is not going to be the same mouse experience as Mac OS. Like they specifically say that. It's not just the MacBooks have mice and that's cool, and now the iPad does. It's like, no, we redesigned it to be like this hybrid of touch and trackpad. So I think that will prevent third-party devs from just switching everything over to the desktop version on the iPad, which is what I was afraid of. So I need to try it to develop an opinion on it, but I like what they're doing with it because for the longest time I just didn't want a mouse on the iPad because I was worried about how they would handle it. But yeah, now I can see what they were doing with the like hybrid approach. So if I use it and I think it's useful and I can see use cases for it, then I'll probably keep the trackpad. But if I think it's confusing and just unnecessary, then I'll return it. We'll see. Yeah, I got the 11-inch because I like having a noticeable difference when I update iPads. I've always gone back and forth since the beginning. I went from my first iPad Pro was the 12.9-inch one. Back then, that was the only iPad Pro. And then after that, I went to the 10.5-inch iPad Pro because it had thinner bezels. After the 10.5-inch iPad Pro, I went to the 12.9-inch iPad Pro I have now because it's noticeable difference. And now that I'm updating again, I'm going back to... I never had an 11-inch iPad Pro, so we'll see. Do people really use touchscreens on laptops? I never found that to be useful. I never did. I've seen laptops with touchscreens, and it's always weird. But the cursor disappears when it is above a clickable object, as if you hold your finger on it. Yeah, so it does feel like the trackpad behaves a lot more differently than just a standard laptop trackpad. Let me know if the pencil on the 11-inch side drives you crazy as me, too close to the volume buttons. Oh, I didn't think about that. Maybe I won't like it for that reason. Let's see, different topic, but the S20 Ultra is priced at $1,200. Do you think it would have been better? Oh, do you mean if it was priced at $1,200? Do you think it would have been better price for value? Well, yeah, anything you make cheaper is going to be a better value, obviously. I don't think the Ultra should have existed. I think they should have just done the S20 and the S20 Plus, and they should have quit at that. I don't think they needed an Ultra. I was going to do my S20 Ultra review today, but then this came out and changed all my plans. Hopefully Apple doesn't release anything tomorrow so I can finally get that video up. I need to return the Ultra. I'm wondering if the shipping centers I go to are going to close. I hope they don't. Everything else is closing around here. Are you going to beta test iOS 14 after WWDC is done and they release the developer betas? I believe so, yeah. I usually do. S20 Ultra is priced at $1,200 in India for being 4G only. Oh, geez. Well, no one in India is going to buy that. No one buys iPhones in India. Try to pitch a $1,200 phone to those people. It's going to be like 0.01% of India. It's not a deal breaker. I usually charge the pencil and then just leave it in the box until I need it, but there's definitely more space for it on the 12.9-inch. Okay, I didn't even notice that. I'll see if I notice a difference with the 11-inch, but yeah, I bought the 12.9-inch when I didn't have a MacBook. So I've actually, if you've been in the Discord, you know I've been considering switching to the 11-inch iPad Pro for a long time. In fact, in the past couple months, there have been a lot of times where I was just using the iPad Pro, just holding it, and it wasn't sitting at my desk. And when I did that, I started thinking, when I was holding it all the time, I was like, you know what, maybe an 11-inch would be more manageable. Maybe that would be more comfortable. And given my next Mac purchase is more than likely going to be a MacBook Pro, it might be a little bit too redundant to keep a 13-inch iPad. Because I don't know when, probably the next year or so, at some point in 2020, I want to get a 16-inch MacBook Pro. And then that will replace my iMac Pro, and iMac Pro will become my live streaming machine. But so I don't think I need two giant mobile displays. So if I have an iPad, I would like it to be smaller. CoinX said something about iMacs as well, so maybe, just maybe, we will get even more launches. Likely, yeah. I mean, there's been just as many rumors for the iPhone SE as there has been the iPad, if not more. So that is either delayed, like a lot of people have been reporting, but it makes me wonder because a lot of people were thinking because of this Foxconn shutting down and the coronavirus and everything, like that was going to delay everything. But now Apple's saying, okay, here's the new iPad Pro, you can get it next week. So if they're able to start producing the iPad Pro and start shipping it next week, why can't they start producing the new iPhone? Like, what's the holdup there? You'll love the 11-inch for portability. It's my favorite part. The 12.9-inch iPad is just too close to my Mac for me. Yeah, well, right now my Mac is 27 inches and it's a desktop, so there's a bit of a differentiating factor there. But if I switch to a MacBook Pro, yeah, it might be a little redundant. Um, the new iMac just released, I guess. I saw something about it on Twitter. Did it? I didn't see anything. Let me check. I don't know if I believe you, but I'll check anyway. If they did something with the iMac, they didn't bring it up in Newsroom. Yeah, I don't see anything. And if we go to Apple's site and go to Mac, there's nothing. It doesn't say new under iMac, but it does say new under Mac Mini, even though the only thing they did was update the storage. So yeah, I don't think they did anything with the iMac. But they probably will soon because CoinX said that was coming. I like how CoinX tweeted like yesterday. He was like, "Don't buy a new iPad Pro, wait," and he was literally telling us to wait like the day before. That makes it a lot more funny. Let's see. I love my 10.5-inch. 12.9-inch would be too big for my usage. 12.9-inch isn't bad if you're using it more like a laptop where it's like sitting at your desk and you're typing on it like that all the time. I just realized something about having an 11-inch is going to be kind of annoying because I don't have a folio case for it and I didn't order one. Maybe I should order one. Not a keyboard case, just something with a cover so I can prop it up. I don't know. You know, I've never tried it without a case for a while, so let me just try it without a case. Let's see. Will you get a new iMac? Assumed a refresh with thinner bezels. I don't know. It depends. Like, they haven't done anything with the bezels of the iMac for years. It's been 10 years now, over 10 years since they did anything with the front of the iMac, which is frustrating to me. And now we've heard rumors that they're going to bring mini LED to the iMac Pro, possibly this year. But what I have concern for that is that Apple can't just make bezels thinner. They've shown that with the Pro Display XDR, that they can't just make thinner bezels. It's that they have to make thinner bezels, but also give it this extreme dynamic range crap and put some type of brand new display tech in it that's going to make it cost $12,000. And if the iMac Pro refresh looks really cool, but it's $12,000, I'm not going to get it. I'm sorry, that's just not worth it. There's literally, I think I talked about this on the last tech podcast, but I have no performance complaints with my iMac Pro. It was a little bit bumpy with macOS Catalina at first, but it's ironed out. The updates are fine now. It's less buggy. When it comes to exporting time, importing time, editing performance, even when editing an 8K video, my iMac Pro base model was perfectly fine. I don't need a faster machine. So if I can get the same performance in a notebook like the 16-inch MacBook Pro did when I reviewed that, it was able to edit everything I could do on the iMac Pro just as fine, sometimes better. And that was the base model. So if I'm getting a new 16-inch MacBook Pro, I'm going to max out the CPU and the GPU. Probably not the RAM, because I don't care about that. But I want to get a fairly maxed out MacBook Pro just because I want the same performance my iMac Pro has on the go. I'm not planning on buying new cameras anytime soon that are going to shoot at 8K at 60 because 8K is stupid. So the whole reason I got the iMac Pro was because my 15-inch MacBook Pro that I got back in 2016 could not handle my Blackmagic footage as well. Excuse me. So I'm not in need of more performance. That's why I didn't buy the Mac Pro. That's why I'm not going to buy a Mac Pro, and that's why I'm more than likely just going to get a MacBook Pro for my next Mac. There was a 9to5 Mac tweet about a new 4K iMac? Or was that a new device? No, they said you read it wrong. It says entry level and upgraded 4K iMacs on sale from $1,100. Yeah, it's just a sale. That's not a new iMac. They're just saying 4K iMacs that aren't the base model, you know, the one that doesn't have the spinning hard drive, those are on sale. They're not saying they were new iMacs. Do you think the trackpad for the iPad was necessary? No, I don't think it was necessary, but it was definitely something a lot of people wanted. So I see Apple catering to that, and I'm glad that they did not just bring over the same trackpads that Macs have. And they're not just replicating the mouse experience. They're redesigning it for the iPad, which I'm okay with. It does approach more laptop-esque territory for me. But if there ever was a decent 2-in-1, this is about as close as it gets. What are you going to do with your Mac Mini if you use iMac Pro for streaming? I'd sell it. I would definitely sell the Mac Mini if I got a 16-inch MacBook Pro. I don't need 3 Macs. I'd be fine with 2. I'm using 2 right now. 1 for streaming, 1 for video stuff. And if I got a new MacBook Pro for editing, then I would just make the iMac Pro for live streaming. So, what do you? We already answered that. I think Pro will be for the Mac. It's not what it is used to be. It'll be like Mac Enterprise Edition or something. I wish they called the Mac Pro the Mac Enterprise, because the new Mac Pro does not fit or go after the same demographic the last Mac Pro went for. Sell it to me? Okay, well, I'm not planning on buying a 16-inch MacBook Pro now. I want to wait till they update it with a new CPU or something. I want to buy it after it gets a site refresh, not a new design or anything, just a new CPU or GPU options. I'll wait till then and then buy one, and then that's probably when I'd sell my Mac Mini. So we'll see. Not in the next couple months, though. It probably will be some time in this year, but not in the next couple months. I feel like it makes the iPad seem more like a dumbed-down Mac to some people. It may in some ways, but you can get a Mac for cheaper than you can get the iPad Pro with a trackpad. So just do that if you want. But I mean, I don't really see how it's considered a dumbed-down Mac when you have thinner bezels, Face ID, ProMotion, a thinner design. You still have USB-C. It's not Thunderbolt 3, but you still have USB-C, and really powerful cameras on the back, a LiDAR sensor. So I don't really see... Plus the A12Z chip is a lot faster than a lot of the base Mac CPUs, so I don't really see how it's dumbed down. If anything, it's just a software limitation above all. If you need Mac software, then obviously get a Mac. But if you're just looking for mobile, powerful hardware, then this can do it. Logically, enterprise can make more use out of it. Outside creators with deeper pockets. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's why I think they should have called the Mac Pro the Mac Enterprise, because it's a completely new demographic Apple's never catered to before. Like, people seem to forget when the new Mac Pro came out, it starts at $6,000. Did you know the trash can Mac Pro was $6,000 maxed out? If you maxed out a trash can Mac Pro, it was $6,000, which seems rather cheap now, doesn't it? At the time it came out, that was really expensive, but I don't consider... If they made a new iPhone and it started at $1,500 and scaled up to $4,000, you wouldn't really consider that a successor to the current iPhones, would you? You'd be like, no, that's like a new lineup. That's like something else. That's not a sequel to the current iPhones. They're just doing something else now. So that's how I look at the new Mac Pro. That's not a new Mac Pro to me. The Mac Pro was something sub $10,000 that was supposed to be cheaper than the desktops, all-in-ones, because it didn't include speakers or a display or everything. It wasn't an all-in-one. It was just a computer part. So that was supposed to be the best spec $4 way to get a Mac. But it isn't. The iMac Pro is a better spec for dollar than the Mac Pro is, as long as you're in the sub $10,000 market. If you're in the over $10,000 market, then I would consider that enterprise. Do you think that next year we will see a new 16-inch MacBook Pro design? Quo thinks so, yes. So he would say mini LED is coming to more and more devices, including the 16-inch MacBook Pro. So possibly, yeah. Do you think iPads will now get Apple Pro software like Xcode and Final Cut Pro X? Man, people have been asking for that for years. I don't know if the trackpad encourages that. I mean, it's possible now. It's more possible than it was yesterday. But Final Cut Pro is weird because it costs $300, and it makes me wonder if they made a version of Final Cut for the iPad, would they just include it for free if you already own Final Cut, or would you have to buy it again? And do you price it at the same price as the Mac version, or is it another $300? Obviously, all of the consumers out there just want to say, "Oh yeah, it's included. It's for free." But I don't think they would make much money on that because it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of energy to redesign Final Cut for the iPad. Even with the trackpad, it would just take a lot of redesign to run it on an ARM CPU. So if they released it and it's $100, no one would buy it. And if it's included, if you already own Final Cut Pro, then only people who own Final Cut Pro would use it, and then people who don't own Final Cut Pro wouldn't buy it. So I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, they'd probably have to make you buy it again. Good job with the new iPad Pro, Apple. Now do it again with the Mini and the Air. Yeah, seriously. Now they can let the Air have just a bad camera, no ProMotion, just a 60 hertz display. But hey, a $500 iPad with Face ID, gesture control, basic camera on the back, maybe make it a little thicker. Doesn't have to be as thick. That would be amazing. That would be awesome. That would be really really popular. Most people who have an iPad don't have Macs. That'd be an interesting statistic. I bet it's a bit higher than you'd expect. I don't know about that. How many people have an iPad but no Mac? I'm not saying you don't exist. I'm just saying I wonder how many people have an iPad and a Mac. Um, I don't know. That'd be interesting. I recently bought an iPad Air 3. I upgraded 256 gigs, then Apple Care, Slim Folio, Apple Care. Spent $900. Now this is out, and I could have spent 800 with 128 gigs. Oof. That's a big oof right there. This is why I never get updated storage configurations. It's so much better and smarter. Well, it helps if you have good Wi-Fi. If you don't have good Wi-Fi, it's probably harder to do this. But it's so much better to just pay $10 a month for 2 terabytes of iCloud storage and to buy the cheapest storage option for every iPad you get. Because those higher storage configurations are probably where the higher profit margins are made. Because it does not cost an extra $100 or $150 for them to swap out the SSD with a 256 instead of 64. It is not that much money. And it kills your resale value when you buy those higher storage configurations. Because if people can buy the same iPad with a smaller storage option for $500 less, they absolutely will if you're reselling it. Um, their storage pricing is stuck in 2016. Kind of. Well, they updated them a lot today, which is helpful. So, but yeah, I mean the extra storage options is just how they increase profit margins. But it's a whole lot cheaper to just pay $120 a year for 2 terabytes on the cloud, and it works seamlessly within Photos and Notes, and it just backs everything up automatically really really well. I don't even think about it. Than it is to spend an extra $150 per device to get just 128 gigs extra. To get the best dollar per gig, cloud storage is the way to go. Um, I mean, using a single platform, then convert to different OS is possible, but likely cause problems. Um, Going native for multiple OS is more efficient, but much more expensive. Okay. Aren't they going to bring Pro software to ARM with the new ARM MacBook? Probably. That's what we've been hearing about for a long time. So maybe it would make sense for Apple to release Final Cut and Xcode for iPad alongside macOS ARM at the Worldwide Developers Conference. So we'll see. I wanted 128 on the 2018 Pro, so I edit videos on my iPad and needed 256 gig. My Wi-Fi sucks. Yeah, good Wi-Fi can help a lot. It really can make a difference. My Spotify downloads itself takes like 30 gigs, 64 gigs isn't the way for me. I I used to think I needed to have all that music downloaded, but then I realized I could very easily stream it, not keep all that stuff local on the device, and you save a lot more money that way. 30 gigs of music you're usually not listening to regularly. You're listening to like 5 albums at a time. So the idea that you need to have 30 gigs stored locally on each device for your music library is just not true. It's just tradition. It's tradition that, well, I got to have my music on my device and I don't want to be in a place where I can't stream it, but you'll find like 99% of the time you're in an area where you can stream. UDM for his network? What is a UDM? Explain. It's the Apple of networking. My network is one room in my house with 2 computers. I don't think we need that. Logic Pro X has a free companion app too. Oh, that's nice. Do you think the self-quarantine situation will boost the viewers live streamers will get? I don't know. For me, it seems to be working. We've had a decent number of people watching today. And I bet there's a lot of you not going to school or not going to work because of that. Um, Apple should make service bundle. I don't know if they talked about it or not. Well, they do have a pro apps bundle for education that you don't have to be in education to buy. So I'd recommend that if you want to get Final Cut and Logic and Compressor and everything for really cheap. Just look up pro apps bundle. Personally, I need my music and stuff downloaded because outdoors my connection is mostly trash and I don't want to think about it. Which music will I listen to in the next hour? I don't think about it either. I just hit shuffle or play pure pop radio or but I don't store any of my music locally. I don't even think about it. I'll download a bunch if I go on a trip, but that's about it. It's like an Airport Extreme, but better with all kinds of... No, I'm not interested in it, so I'm not going to look it up. DNS filter, VLAN support. None of those things sound interesting to me, so I'm not going to look it up. You're going to have to sell me on it if you want a petition for me to get one. Why do I need this? Because I'm doing everything I'm doing right now, and I am not using that, and it seems to be going fine. That's right. Drew has no server. Drew has no dedicated office. Drew has no editor, but I was still able to get that video up before everybody else on YouTube. I checked while the video was processing. I was like, new iPad Pros, and I couldn't find anything. I was the very first channel to talk about it. So when it comes to speed and efficiency, I think I got everybody beat. And that's without UDS or whatever. I have an Air 2 and a 7 Plus. No Mac. We'll be getting the new iPad next week. The Air goes to wife. Oh, okay. Got him. Can we just acknowledge DR Dewdrop is calling the 2020 iPad Pro the IPP? I'm sorry. That's just a hilarious name. Is meant for people who are in the intention of buying a new iPad Pro. It is not meant as an upgrade for users who own 2018 IPP. This is where the backward compatible, insanely priced, probably unbeatable, useful keyboard comes into play. Yeah. Did you see today's SpaceX launch? I was watching it, and then the iPad Pros dropped, so I had to turn it off. It sucked, but I heard the Falcon rocket didn't make it, so that I checked out. I checked out what happened after the video was done and posted. But yeah, I was gonna watch the rocket launch and everything, but I had to. They updated the website with the new iPad Pros and everything, and I had to read all the new stuff. Do you think the new iPad Smart Keyboard will work with the 2019 iPad? There is no 2019 iPad Pro. The new keyboards work with the old iPads. Yes, you can look it up on the website. Yeah, I got the Pro Bundle a few years ago. Thanks to you. It helped me a lot in different ways. Thanks, man. For sure. I'm glad I found it. No one was talking about it back when I found it. And at the time, I think I was still in education, so I actually could justify it. But they never verified that you're in education or anything. They're never like, what's your school or where's your student ID or where's your student email or anything. You just got to find the link and click buy, and then you get it. It's like $200 and you get like $700 worth of apps. Kelly, thank you for the Twitch Prime subs. Daily refreshes for the rest of the week. iPhone 9 for tomorrow and Mac updates like storage and maybe design. I wouldn't count on it. When Apple released the new, was it AirPods Pro or MacBook Pro? Which came first? Yeah, I think it was the AirPods Pro. When the AirPods Pro came out, a lot of people thought, oh, we're going to get a week-long refresh of new hardware, and it didn't happen. The 16-inch MacBook Pro didn't come out for a couple more weeks, so it could have just been an isolated incident. Given the first website refresh would have been on a Wednesday now, because today's a Wednesday, I have my doubts that there will be a new website refresh tomorrow. There could be, but I'm not totally convinced. I feel like they might wait a week or so, or if the rumors and the analysts are correct in assuming that the iPhone SE has been delayed for later in the year, then I don't think they would want to announce it now. They would want to announce it when it's ready to ship, because that's what they did with the iPad Pro. How long did it take you to learn Final Cut if you edit on that? Final Cut's pretty easy, to be honest with you. Other apps are a lot harder to learn. I used Adobe Premiere and After Effects for about 6 years. Those are definitely a lot less user friendly. They have a lot of options, but they're not as easy. Final Cut's pretty intuitive, but still somewhat customizable. Um, so for the longest time, when I was real little, I just would edit on iMovie, which was not great. I wouldn't recommend iMovie to like iMovie on Mac at least sucks. iMovie on the iPad's a little bit better, but iMovie on the Mac is terrible. So I switched to Final Cut. I think I was in middle school at the time, and it was a pretty easy transition. You just figure out the hotkeys and everything kind of flows pretty naturally. It didn't take me long. I never took like a course on it, or I never took a class or anything. I just kind of played around with it until I got it to do what I wanted. And people on YouTube will tell you how to use it for free. It's don't pay anyone to teach you how to use Final Cut. Um, it's very simple, and yeah, it didn't take long. Probably just a week or so before I was using it for all of my videos. And Adobe Premiere took a little bit longer to figure out. Probably a couple weeks before I had it completely figured out. But then I used that for 6 years. But I could not stand the software apps, the software support Adobe was providing, and their apps were so dang expensive. $30 a month, and then they raised it to $50 a month for me. It's like they get you while you're young. I noticed that with the Creative Cloud is a lot of you guys are students. So when you sign up for Creative Cloud, it's not that bad. It's like $20 a month or $10 a month or whatever. You're like, oh, okay, this isn't that bad. But then once you get out of education, they start slowly increasing the price. And you're like, well, I need it for school, and I grew up with this, and I'm comfortable with it, so I don't want to switch to anything else. And then they'll do what they did to me, which happened, I think, in 2018. I'd been using Creative Cloud for years, and all of a sudden they were like, we're going to increase your rate to $50 a month from 30. And I was like, what? Why? What's changing? Do I get anything out of it? And they were like, no, you've just been on the education bundle for too long. And after a while, they just say, no, you're going to pay full price. Now, $50 a month, that's crazy. 4 months in, and you've paid for Final Cut for life. Final Cut is a fixed expense. That's how they get you with the education bundles, because you'll be comfortable with it when you're a student, but then once you get out of college and you're still using it, that's when they start gouging you, because they're like, oh, you must be a professional. You can afford us. And the apps were terrible. They were not fast. The export, like I showed you today with how quickly I exported and uploaded that video on the iPads, I could not have done that with Adobe. Not possible. Their export times are vastly slower than Final Cut. Like more than twice as slow. And the quality when I was finished exporting with Adobe was not even that much better. It was like sometimes it would look worse than the Final Cut exports. So it wasn't the bit rate and the quality was not better. The export time was not better, and there were a ton of bugs with Adobe's updates. I would have a bunch of presets with After Effects and Premiere, and then they would update all of Creative Cloud, and they don't want to go through the Mac App Store. They want to have this little drop-down menu in the taskbar at the top, and they want you to update through there, and it has to open up every time. Creative Cloud has a new update. Creative Cloud has a new update, and then it throws away all your presets, so it ruins everything. And there were a bunch of bugs that were like, it made my MacBook crash when I had it on my MacBook Pro. It would make the iMac Pro speakers pop. It would just make loud clicking noises in the middle of editing. It was not well designed. It was incredibly buggy. It did not keep my presets, and it was not fast, and the exports didn't look good, and it was more expensive. So it's just made no sense to keep using it. If Final Cut is stable and released for iPad, will you make a 1-month iPad editing challenge? I already did the iPad 1-month challenge years ago. You can go back and watch running a YouTube channel off the iPad Pro, and that was long before iPad OS. That was long before there was a keyboard or a trackpad you can dock to it. I just ran everything off the original 2015 iPad Pro. I already did that, and I know it can be done. It's just not as efficient, and at this point in my life, efficiency is king. Whatever I can make the fastest and whatever I can make with retaining my quality but saving time, that's what I prioritize. So yes, you can do it with an iPad. I don't need to do a 1-month challenge to convince myself of that, because I did it 5 years ago before they even made iPad OS more useful and before LumaFusion was a thing. Some of my first videos that got really popular, I edited with iMovie on the iPad Pro with the Apple Pencil. So I don't need to do a challenge. I'm aware it can be done, and I'm sure I could do it. It would just mean it would take a lot more of my time, which I don't have a lot of. Time is my most precious resource right now, and the videos would probably feel and interact the same. It would just not be as fast. Even with a trackpad and a mouse on the iPad, it would not be as fast. We're using Creative Cloud in school, but at home I'm utilizing powerful Mac alternatives. That's good. Affinity is another good one. Photoshop is not necessary. A lot of people use Photoshop for the brand name. There were so many people complaining that Adobe Photoshop isn't on the iPad. When can we get Photoshop? It's like, there are apps on the iPad that do exactly what Adobe Photoshop does. You just don't want to use them because they're not Photoshop. There's a lot of brand loyalty with Adobe apps. People are like, no, it has to be Photoshop. I can't use anything else. Is $550 for an Apple refurbished 2018 iPad Pro worth it? Yeah, I think that sounds like a great deal. Maybe it's better on Windows. It may be better on Windows, but I guarantee you there's no program on Windows that will be as efficient or export as fast as a Mac with Final Cut, because Microsoft doesn't make video editing software. So there's nothing, everything you will get on Windows will be less optimized than is Final Cut on Mac. It will never be that fast. Please do regular live streams. It's so boring being self-quarantined. Okay, I'll keep going. I mean, I gotta work on some other videos now. I've been live for an hour and 20 minutes, but I know a lot of people are self-quarantined. But listen to our podcasts. We do lots of podcasts. Check those out. I'm doing videos every day. I'm doing as much as I can. But I know a lot of people are really bored, so I should probably up my live streaming amount. So I'm going to go work on the EV channel now. Drew, do you know if iPad Air 3 can be traded in for a discount? Yeah, you can trade in any of your iPads, but the trade-in value is terrible. I checked. My iPad Pro was $1,000, and they want to give me $240 for trade-in. So don't trade it in. It shows up when you go to the iPad Pro order page on Apple.com. You'll see a little drop-down menu thing that says like iPad trade-ins eligible. But thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for the donations and the Twitch Primes. Really appreciate it. I hope you have an excellent rest of your day, and thank you for watching my videos. That's the best thing you can do to support me. That or just donate money, but I don't expect you to do that. So stay safe out there. Wash your hands. Keep it clean. And I will chat with you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.